To make a video on just a little tiny piece of the thoughts I had this morning. Trying to get through my workout, wasn't working. I had too much on my mind. I don't really have time to record this right now, but oh well. I would record this on my phone. My phone's dead. My headphones are dead. It's Monday. Yesterday was Sunday. It was a really intense Sunday, and so everything just had to go by the wayside to get done what I was doing. It was good though. Anyway, of the huge flood of thoughts this morning, my process is usually take rough notes, write down everything I can, and it's so fast and quick that I just get a little bit down where I have to move to the very next thing that's on my mind. And some of that gets into books. That's sort of the first. It goes from the rough notes. I try to get it into books. From some of those thoughts, I can express them concisely enough without grabbing onto a bunch of other things that I can put them onto blog posts. Sometimes I can do videos, although I really try not to. Writing is much harder than just speaking and making videos, but it's better for a lot of reasons given the situation, the constraints, for many reasons. And I don't want to delve into this too much, but I've spoken about how we limit our windows of receipt is a phrase that I use, but the constraints we place on God are phenomenal. We limit him so much. And one of the ways we do that is in the forms of expression in which we're willing to let him speak, or through which we're willing to allow him to speak to us. And so for many years, I told people I'd be taking down a lot of blog posts, and I don't know why, but no one believed me. When I finally did it, they were surprised. And I've gotten requests, oh, you wrote this blog post one time, can you put it back up? No. If there's a compelling reason, sure. But, the constraint that's placed on me with that is that, one, there are things that are just too important to squeeze into a way that's convenient to receive. So if you limit all the truth that God can give you to something that can fit in a Twitter tweet, you have cut yourself off from eternity. It's as simple as that, because there are many things that just cannot be expressed. We believe that there are things that are of such content that they cannot be expressed in language that we have. So things that are either unlawful to be written or unable to be written. Those are two separate things, because there is no means sufficient in this world. So if that's true, then surely there are things that cannot be expressed over Twitter or over a video or over a blog post. And I get messages from time to time from people who say, oh yeah, I started one of your books, or I've watched some of your videos or read your blog posts, and I can't wait to read your books. What are you waiting for? I mean, if it's worth it, right? If you don't find value in it, for sure, don't go deeper. But if you have found value at the level that you've invested, why wouldn't you double down? That's wonderful advice for life and applies to all things. Jesus said, try the spirits. He said in John 7:17, those who do my will know it's from the Father. So do the things I say, we'll know it's from the Father. So truth leaves clues. And that's actually, all that was preamble, wasn't planned. I'm just rambling. But what I'd like to speak about today is reactions to truth. Now, this is something I've written about before, and I've written a lot more about it that I haven't published yet, and that will come out with time. But there's so much value in these things that God teaches me, and I just want to share them with people. But there are so many limits that people put up, and I have to navigate through those, just like everyone who loves God has to in trying to serve other people. But sometimes there's a crack, and when I see the crack, I exploit the crack. And so I think that we can talk about these things, but I'm sure that someone's going to get worked up about them anyway. I guess one benefit of doing videos is that they're not so easy to proof text, to grab a little quote out of context and sort of, and saying all this, I mean, don't think that I sit around stewing about what people think. I couldn't care less. in one regard. In the regard that you would probably care about what other people think, I couldn't care less. I care because I care about you. And I know that these things have value, and I know what happens if you don't have them. And that's why, that's the extent to which it bothers me. But I am so busy in my life that I just don't have time to care about what people think. I know what I've been given to do, and I'm doing it. And it takes everything I have, and that's all there is to it. Okay, without further ado, so where I grew up, there were these things that we called lightning bugs. I think some people call them June bugs, but maybe that's something else. But you know, when the sun goes down, these bugs come out and they flash their lights. And speaking of light, I'm sorry, the quality in it. I have a thing for my cell phone that I bought, and if I turn these overhead lights on, it looks terrible. The sun's really not up. I live in Montana. It's the early morning. We just kind of get used to living in perpetual darkness as the sun wears off, the summer wears off. So we're just gonna have to deal with it. So lightning bugs, we don't have them out here. And that's sad. It's kind of cool to see them. I don't think my kids have ever seen lightning bugs. That's really sad. Anyway, so they flash these lights. And an interesting fact about lightning bugs, I know I've mentioned this before, is that they follow the lights of other lightning bugs. And so it's cool. You see a swarm of just sort of flashing lights, and there's different brightness in these lightning bugs' butts. And as they flash their lights, they'll actually seek out brighter lights than they have. That's pretty crazy. And so in at least one way, a little bug is a lot smarter than people, because we don't tend to do that. Human nature is quite the opposite. I'm going to go over that a little bit in this video, which I'd hoped to be short. It's not going to be. Oh, well. Okay, so let's start with the 10 lepers. So there were 10 lepers, and here's the story from Luke. And as he entered into a certain village, there met him 10 men that were lepers, which stood afar off. And they lifted up their voices and said, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. And when he saw them, he said unto them, Go show yourselves unto the priests. And it came to pass that as they went, they were cleansed. So all 10 had sufficient faith in Jesus, because, you know, they had heard stories about his healing people, and maybe they had heard something that he taught. And they had faith enough to meet him, to get closer to him. They stood afar off because of the legality of being a leper. You know, you can infect other people. That was the law, and also just sort of common courtesy. They lifted up their voices, so they had enough faith to notice him, because he came to the certain village. So once he was there, so he did that work, they got close enough to him that they could call to him, and they said, Master, have mercy on us. And when he saw them, he said, Go show yourselves unto the priests. He didn't say you're healed. He didn't say, Go show yourself to the priest, and on the way you'll be healed. He just said, do this. So they had evidence to seek him for a specific thing. And then when he told them what to do, it didn't matter how much sense it made. They made the decision based on what they had already observed. And so then they did that thing, right? So we hatched chickens for the first time this summer. And so we did it naturally and technologically. I bought an incubator, and then we had a very motivated hen that found a 5-gallon bucket, turned on its side, and laid some eggs in there and sat on them for 28 days. And somehow the kids in charge of managing the coop missed that, and whatever, we got some chicks out of it. But there's important lessons in this. See, if you really believe that God is in and through all things, you will look in and through all things to find him. And I don't mean that, you know, you're literally going to look for him in some weird place, but little pieces of him will manifest in and through all things. And so it's almost like it's like that old game Zelda for the original Nintendo. where there's this thing, the Triforce, and it had all these powers, and it was broken in pieces, and you have to scour the whole map of the land on these adventures to find it. It's like that, but the Triforce is Jesus, and he's scattered into a billion pieces all over the place. Not literally in the sense that he is a being and he is in a place and you can meet him face to face, and you should, and that should be the goal, is to know him wholly. But the way you do that, there's resources all around us because he is in and through all things. Little pieces of him are in and through all things. And so you get those, you filter those out, and you live according to what you learn, and you ascend towards him. You become more like him, and your eyes can see more than you could see before. And anyway, so in this chicken coop, sorry, I don't know what's going on. It seems like there's a 10-minute limit on this. I could probably fix that. Don't care. Don't have time. So we'll just do it in chunks. In this chicken coop, there was a hen that had not given birth, but hatched the eggs naturally. And then there's the incubator. And the point I got into that I wanted to make with the eggs is that an egg has all the nutrients it needs for that chick to get to the point where the egg hatches. When the egg hatches, you have 3 days that it can live off of whatever it's got in its body already. And then it has to start eating and drinking. And the sooner it starts eating and drinking, the better. But you have 3 days. 3 days is an important and interesting time frame. But what I wanted to say with that is God gives us enough. Truth is very hard to see and perceive and understand and value correctly. Accurately, I should say. Because correctly makes you think it's a light switch, but it's not. It's a dimmer, and you can get closer or further away. So accuracy is more correct than being correct. So anyway, you have 3 days. God gives us all we need. What is right is always possible to figure out. It doesn't take tons of time. It takes a lot of honesty, but it doesn't take tons of time. We have the perception and the understanding and access to him sufficient to figure out what is right, as clearly as the dark is from the day. What is almost never clear is by how much. So in other words, the magnitude of any decision is very hard to understand in the moment. But the direction of a correct decision is always apparent. It's apparent through your conscience. And I wrote all about this in the book on repentance, which you absolutely should read if you have not. And if one book is too much for you to think about, start on chapter 5, I think. Okay, but read the whole thing. So the natural chicken, the broody hen, she had these chicks in a bucket. And we thought, well, that's great because incubators take time and money and whatever. But like the natural way is better, right? Well, here's the thing about that hen is as soon as the chicks hatch, we were monitoring it. So we had discovered this. I discovered this about the first 6 hours after they hatched. And then she started pecking these chicks, right? She had crushed one and she was just really crazy. So I took her out and I took the chicks and I put them in the little setup I had to take care of freshly hatched chicks. And we made sure they got food and water because, I mean, the hen was not only not taking care of that, but she was sitting on them and pecking them and whatever. So sometimes what's sufficient for the beginning, right after you hatch, or for right now, wherever you are, is not ideal for what comes next, okay? And if you don't think chickens are a sufficient learning tool, then maybe you should wonder why Jesus said so often that he would gather us as a hen gathers chicks under her wings, which is, if you've seen that, it's very powerful imagery. It's very powerful imagery. So that chicken will give its life. Even with its little pea brain, it has enough instinct or whatever else to shelter those chicks, even if it costs her her life. If a dog attacks that hen, it won't even think about it. It'll give its life for those chicks. And the environment there, it's warm, it's safe. Anyway, we could talk about that. I'm not going to. But the point is that God gives us these stairs, and he provides the next step, the next step, the next step. So he always gives us sufficient information, and then we make the decision, and then we're in the next situation where we've grown and we have access to greater resources, and we grow towards him. So back to these lepers. They had enough information to make the correct decision here, and they did. And so they asked him to be healed, and he said, Go show yourselves unto the priests. And it came to pass that as they went, they were cleansed. So obviously they believed that Jesus was going to heal them. A better faith would have been to believe that whatever Jesus was leading them towards was better than whatever they had before. That's a more mature level of faith. But they wanted to be healed, and they assumed that in going to the priest, this was part of being healed. Now, ancient Israelites were way better at this sort of thing than us, because if it's not super obvious to us that what we're being asked to do is exactly what will deliver, exactly what we're asking for, we don't do it, right? And I should say people don't do it, because I do it, but it wasn't always that way. So you have to grow out of that. That's little kindergarten challenge type stuff. If you really believe that God is the supremacy of goodness, he's not only good, he is the very definition. By definition, he is the apex of good. He is the paragon of good. He is the definition of good. There's nothing better than God. And everything he gives you because he loves you more than you love yourself. Everything he sends your way is better than anything you could have otherwise. That is the way it is. And when you really believe that, you can say you believe in Jesus. If you really believe in Jesus, you will accept all things from him, no matter how much they hurt in the moment or how different they are from what you say you want. You'll want him more than anything else. And this is why these videos are really hard to make, because when I'm writing, I can hit pause and go talk about this thing and go talk about that thing. In the videos, everything from God is interconnected. All things are interconnected. They're intertwined like pieces of yarn. You can't just take one thread out and talk about that thread without a lot of skill. And, it's more than I have, I guess. But anyway, you touch one thing, you touch it all. And it's very important to trust God unconditionally, holding nothing back, because it doesn't matter what you want. What you should want is God and whatever he wants. And if it's anything less than that, he will do anything he can to get anything good into your life that you will accept. But we limit him so much, and we need to stop. I wrote a blog post the other day that was about not running fast enough. He wants to show you how to run fast enough. And it's not about surviving or getting goodies. The faith of most people is, I believe in Jesus as long as he gives me what I want. That's not what it's about. It's about getting what he knows you could have and what you're not smart enough or courageous enough or good enough to appreciate right now. And you're none of those things enough to even know it exists. Eye hath not seen what God has prepared for those who love him. Your mortal eye has not seen it. Your eye of faith can see it, and he will show you. But the way he has of showing you is more than what most people can bear. They don't have the faith. He has things to show us and tell us that we can't bear right now. And the only way to get there is to trust in him, and he can take us to the place where he can show us. So he was trying to do that with these lepers. You might not understand this, but Jesus has never done a miracle solely for the purpose of alleviating suffering. That was never the main purpose of any of it, and it never is. And this is one reason that so few people experience them today. It's not because he has some restriction on that. There's some edict in heaven that they have to pause or whatever. Nope, he has not changed. We have changed. He has not changed. If you want miracles in your life, one way you can make that happen is by getting out of his way. Just like all the good things he wants to send in your life, just get out of his way. Just let him do what he needs to do and go with him instead of blocking him. Let him lead you and you follow him. Don't try to get him to follow you. He's not going to. And if you feel like you're doing that, all you're doing is just putting this huge filter on all the stuff he wants to give you, all the characteristics he wants you to become. You're putting a huge filter on that, and that little tiny part he squeezes through, you're celebrating that as if you have some great thing. And you do. It's much greater than what the world can provide, but it is nothing compared to what he has to give you. I better get back to this. So these lepers, right? All right, so they go on their way, and sure enough, they don't even have to get there yet. These Old Testament folks and New Testament folks, the ancient Israelites, they were well-versed in symbolism and this idea that prophets made you do weird things in order to get the goodies, right? So when Naaman the Syrian wanted to be healed of leprosy, he had to go bathe in the Jordan River a bunch of times. And he protested about this because he was not an Israelite, and it was a weird thing. He wasn't used to prophets asking people to do weird things. But the Israelites, they knew. They knew. So when these lepers were told to go to the priest, they expected something to happen. If not then they'd come back, be told something else, and they'd be healed. And so on their way, they didn't even get there. On their way, they were healed. And one of them, when he saw that he was healed, he turned back, and with a loud voice, he glorified God. What does that mean, glorified God? You should look up that word glorified and figure it out. I won't go too deeply into it right this second, but it's to have a greater perception of God's goodness. And so in glorifying, what you're doing is you're expressing your increased perception of God's goodness, right? This is very related to worship, but again, we'll save that for another time. True worship, which unlocks what Jesus meant when he said, worship God in spirit and in truth. All right. So he went, he turned back, and this is interesting. With a loud voice, he glorified God, and he fell down on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. And he was a Samaritan. So it's interesting. What were the other people? We don't know. But it says he was a Samaritan. So maybe this is a contrast with the others. Who knows? But the point is, even a Samaritan had enough sense to come back and thank Jesus. Now this is interesting because that's not what Jesus said to do. He said, go show the priests. That's all he told them to do. This guy was not obeying him. He came back and he gave him thanks. And Jesus answering said, were there not 10 cleansed? But where are the 9? So this is interesting because he's criticizing the other ones who knows what they did. This is very interesting because it didn't say the 9 went to the priests. They may have just skedaddled, say, oh, thanks, we got what we wanted, peace, right? It's not about healing. It was never about the leprosy. Not for Jesus. For these guys it was. But there were greater things here. And if you don't focus on what God's telling you to do, you're going to miss all the greater things. And you might get healed. You probably won't. And you'll just be in pretty much the same place you're in. And that's not the purpose, right? It's all wasted. Okay, so this one comes back and Jesus says, where are the other 9? So he doesn't punish the one that came back saying, I'm sorry, why didn't you go to the priest like I told you, right? So it's, in a way, he's kind of, honoring this, but he's giving regard to this person for having come back and thanked him. Anyway, he continues, "They are not found that return to give glory to God, save this stranger." So this is interesting. So it's necessary to show yourself to the priest, but this guy is recognizing what really happened, and it's not the priest that did it. It's Jesus. So he comes back to Jesus. And he said, "Arise, go thy way, thy faith hath made thee whole." And this is one of those stories where you kind of have to bounce around the Gospels and make a composite of what really happened. In Mark, he says, at this point in the story, he says, "See thou say nothing to any man, but go thy way, show thyself to the priest, and offer for thy cleansing those things which Moses commanded for testimony unto them." Okay, let's parse this out. These people were under the law of Moses. There was a prescribed set of things they were supposed to do once they were healed from leprosy. And this wasn't a protocol specific to miraculous healing. If you had leprosy and you didn't have leprosy after that, then there were things you were supposed to do. And there was a cleansing ritual that the priest did, right? But that's not the only thing Jesus said. So part one was, you're under the law of Moses, you're healed, but go do what you're obligated to do because you're under the law of Moses. The second thing is also very important. For a testimony unto them. A testimony of what? Well, he said, see thou say nothing to any man. Right? So this is interesting. So don't tell anybody how this happened, but go to the priests and show them that it did. This is very interesting, right? There are so many pieces of evidence that people will disregard, no matter how valid they are, if where the evidence came from contradicts the things that they believe. It doesn't matter how valid the evidence is, they will go with their previous beliefs every time. It's actually a named psychological human bias. This is well known and well studied. You will always prefer your previous beliefs, even when, like, you'll give a bias to them. You will boost the weight of that evidence over new evidence, even if objectively the new evidence is superior. So this is something we all need to look out for. But Jesus was working around this by saying, don't tell the priests how this happened, but show them that it did. Let that evidence work on them. And this is important. So that leper was given a choice opportunity to be a vessel to testify of Jesus in ways that Jesus himself could not testify. Not that he didn't have the ability, but he was blocked off from people whose sacred cows made a barrier that they were not willing to accept better evidence from better source. This is a key in understanding one of the most powerful aspects of how God can use humans to teach other people about him, about himself. And unfortunately, like this leper, we all miss out on tons of opportunities to do this. There are a lot of reasons for this, okay? I don't really want to get into this in this video. It's not the point. But there is a ministry that can only be performed by people, by a network of people branching out from wherever it came from. The root is Jesus and the Father. But the kingdom is a network and it branches out. And it's a false teaching that God does not need people for his ministry. He doesn't need you specifically, whoever you are, but he needs people. So there are things that people can do that because of people he cannot do, right? The limitation is imposed by people. Anyway, I hope you get that. There's a lot more to say and know about that, but that's not my point here, so I'm going to keep cruising. So what does this guy do? Okay, if you were a leper and you had been healed, you come and pay face value to thanking God for that, but then you just go about your merry way. This dude just went out. It says he went out and began to publish it much. That's exactly what Jesus said not to do. And did he go to the priest? No, he did not. It doesn't say he did. He went out and began to publish it much and to blaze abroad the matter. Now, I don't know what that guy was thinking. Maybe he was thinking, oh, but this is so good, I can't keep this to myself. Maybe he was thinking, I'm special because I got healed. Some people do that. And I want to advertise it because now I'm the man. Who knows? But the effect of what he did was at least twofold. One, he deprived the priest of evidence the priest would have otherwise received. Two, he hedged up the way. He made it harder for Jesus to do what Jesus needed to do. It says, Jesus could no more openly enter into the city, but was without in desert places, and they came to him from every quarter. There's a time and a place for everything. When Jesus' mom asked him to make wine out of the water at the wedding in Cana, Jesus said, woman, it's not my time. And some people will be offended at my inflection there. I don't care. Some people explain this away. Like, well, woman didn't mean what it would mean if someone used it today. There are a lot of words like that. But Jesus was saying, however he said it, he was saying sternly, don't ask me to do what it's not yet time for me to do. Because this is all a plan. It's all laid out. It's like a clock. And I got to do it just like I'm supposed to do it or it won't work. It's a process. And this leper made it harder. So nothing can derail the purposes of God. It's going to happen because he is in control. And nothing happens that he does not allow to happen. But with Jesus and with everyone who serves him, you have the power to make it easier or harder for them. And you do that in how you, in part by how you react to what they do. Okay? And so if you were in this leper's place, I hope that you can come to the point where honestly, you would say, I wouldn't do what this guy did. As for me, I would have gone straight to the priest and done what he said. No matter how grateful I was, I would have shown my gratitude in my obedience. He said in another place, Jesus said, I want obedience, not sacrifice. What he was saying was, don't tell me how much you appreciate me. Show me by doing what I tell you. So, we left off on the last one talking about obedience, not sacrifice. So, he says, I think what I said was, God says, don't tell me how much you appreciate what I do for you. Show me by doing what I tell you to do. He's like a father where you mess up and you go to him and you say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I did. And he says, don't be sorry. Just don't do it again. That's what he wants from us because he knows what's best. And he knows where the joy is. He's already solved the puzzle, folks. He knows the answer. He's trying to guide us to it, but you can't just know the answer. You have to become the answer. It's tied, it's interwoven with the process itself. That's how he shows you, is by taking you there. Okay, so I hope that instead of what this leper did, we would have gone to the priest, like he said. No matter how grateful we were, we would have shown him by doing what he said. And then immediately after the priest did his thing, and we wouldn't have told a soul who did it to us. And if the priest said, who did this? You'd say, I'm not supposed to say. He told me not to tell anyone. And even if they said, you better tell us or we're going to kill you, you can say, well, kill me. Because guess what? That guy cured me of leprosy. I'm pretty sure that he can make sure I'm okay in the eternities too. Right? So, and then you'd hightail it as fast as you could once the priest was done, back to Jesus, right? In another verse, going back to Luke 17, Luke's version of this, the last verse, verse 19 of this story, Jesus says to the man, arise, go thy way. Well, what is your way? Whatever it was before he healed you, is there any way that's better than his way now. Okay, so that's a great segue into two other points I wanted to raise. One of these is, it's two vignettes of how people responded to what I would call blasts of light, manifestations of God, okay? More light and truth, improvement. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's all the same. So here's two stories. One is Moses. So, short recap, Moses had lived 40 years or whatever in the courts of Pharaoh. He was very high in the chain of command. He had military victories, political victories, contributions, I should say, all sorts of accolades of the world. And then he gets cast out. And he got cast out because God told him, I have this mission for you with these people, your people, the Hebrews. And everyone knew that there was this prophecy of a deliverer that would come. It was legendary there. And God basically said, you're this person. And Moses thought he'd go about doing this by his own hand. I'm not criticizing him for doing this. This is a very normal thing to do, as you say, all right, well, how exactly can I fulfill this thing that God showed me? What's the next step? And he saw two Hebrews arguing, and he killed the one to save the other, whatever, and tried to hide it. And he got found out and exiled. And so he was exiled, and he's in Midian, and he's a shepherd. Now, it's easy to tell stories like this, but you really need empathy to understand them. And I don't mean empathy in the world's use of the term. I mean revelatory experience. So God can help you discern how this was. And if you're not careful, he'll help you discern by living how this was with whatever story you're reading from the scriptures. And then the depth of it just increases infinitely. And you can see things that maybe aren't in the text because they're written in your heart now. They're etched. Paul talks about how he carried the marks of Jesus bodily. And what he meant by that is he had scars on his body from being beaten and from all the things he had gone through. In what people did to him because what he said, what he taught them about Jesus. And the words he uses there, it talks about, it's the same words you'd use to describe branding an animal. And so Greek and Hebrew, they're powerful languages because they have so many connections. And at the same time, Paul was saying, I have scars on my body that I've gotten from how I've lived like Jesus and how I've taught about him without regard to what people would do to me because of it. But he was also saying, the life I've lived, it's branded me as the property of Jesus. And because I have not been ashamed of him and who I am and what I do, he will not be ashamed of me in the last day, when I stand before the Father to be judged of this life I've lived. Because he has sealed me his. He has connected me to him in an everlasting bond that can't be broken. Because what made it valid has been done. It's done and it can't be undone. Because it can only happen here. He says, I've run the race and I've won the prize. And everything he did in his ministry wasn't so he could win the prize, folks. He already had it. He was turning around and running back to help other people cross the line. So, Moses had gone through a lot of things, and it's hard to imagine that unless you've been through things like it. And you can read about it, but it's not the same. But God can give it to you in your life in ways that other people wouldn't even know. They wouldn't see it from the outside. So, a piece of understanding what Moses was going through at this time was to understand that in his culture, the culture of Egypt, the culture he grew up in, as a member of the household of Pharaoh, the family of Pharaoh, cattle people, shepherds were an abomination. And here he was, a shepherd. He kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. He went from the prince of Egypt to a servant shepherd in Midian. Now, it's hard for people to wrap their head around this. It's hard. So, anyway, for the sake of time, you can take that and think about it, but I need to keep moving. So here he is in that level of humility, being humbled. And it says he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. The bush was not consumed because the fire was not earthly fire. It's described as a bush because it was a billowing fire. And it was caused by the glory of this angel of the Lord that appeared unto him. And Moses looked and beheld. So theophanies are really something, and I can't go into more here as much as we were getting into theophanies, and I said I can't go into these as much as I would like right now, but for the purposes that I'm trying to focus on in this video, different people react differently to the same manifestations of God. Jesus, well, we'll skip over that. Different people react differently to different manifestations of God. And the glory of God is perceivable and endurable. The degree to which the glory of God is perceivable and endurable is determined by the glory of the Spirit inside of you. And that is true directly in terms of what you can perceive and withstand. It's also true indirectly because how aligned you are with God, and this is a binary question, it's not a slider, determines what's closer to a binary than it is a slider, determines how fully you are enveloped in the Spirit. And when you're enveloped in the Spirit, you can stand in glory, you can stand in the presence of beings of glory while in the flesh and not have your flesh consumed. But you can only do so because that Spirit, the Holy Ghost, is a filter. And filters make it easier to see things that you couldn't otherwise see because you would be saturated, overwhelmed, overcome. But they do so by blocking a lot of what's there. So one's inherent glory is very important because without it, you cannot experience the full range of what is there. You can stand and you can be comfortable and you can have peace. You can enjoy the peace that's provided by a degree of glory of that being in whose presence you stand that lies far beyond your own. It lies beyond anything you could have of yourself. But you cannot experience them fully. And because of that, light, truth, and joy, they're all intertwined. Because of that, you cannot experience the fullness of joy you would if you could experience this being fully. So, I could say a lot more about that, and I'm not going to right now. I've said what I said because it's necessary to understand what I'm going to say now. Moses saw this bush burning with fire because the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in that flame. Moses was standing, and he looked, and he beheld the fire. We read this and we just say, yeah, okay, whatever. We see it in the movie, whatever. You have to understand that Moses was an exceptionally rare individual when it comes to the degree of glory which he held. He had more glory than almost anyone ever born. He came to this world with it. And he still possesses it. More so, actually, in fact, than he did at that time. And so for him to be able to see this fire and to stand there, first to look at it, because we think that our experience is tied much more to our eyes than it is in some ways. In other ways, we should understand more of it than we do. But your experience goes far beyond this. When I first saw the Lord, before I processed it optically, I knew he was there. And I felt it, and I knew what that was. And I looked down immediately, because at that point in my life, I had not lived according to that experience. I looked down immediately. It was involuntary. I looked down. I could not look at his face. I didn't see his face at that time. But it wasn't my optical response that did that. It was my spirit. When Gabriel appeared to Daniel, and Daniel was righteous enough that the Lord bragged about him. He said, this is an example of righteousness. When Gabriel appeared to Daniel, Daniel immediately collapsed on the floor, not in worship. He was dying because the glory was so overwhelming. He could not remain on his feet. He says this wasn't just a physical experience. His comeliness became corruption, which is a beautiful way that the King James translators rendered this idea of the glory of God turns everything that you thought was good about you into filth. Not just filth, because filth is dirty and disgusting, right? it turns it into utter weakness, utter nothingness. It's like everything you thought was strength turns into an anchor that just crushes you because it's so nothing compared to what's before you. And most people don't want to experience that. Truth be told, right? How would you like everything good in your life to instantly be taken from you and just leave you with a void, right? All the joy you ever had from all those things, all the satisfaction just turned to nothing in a second. And to be instantly blasted with irrefutable evidence that what is available and what is actually good is immeasurably better than anything you've ever imagined. And you don't have it. You are as different from that as you could be. As Isaiah put it, as different as the heavens are from the earth. That's how distant it is. So it takes a monumental amount of faith to see that as a good thing. On one level, the most basic, to say God is good, therefore any revelation of him is also good. I will take it and I will treasure it. And on another level, to say I cannot move towards what I do not yet conceive of. And in showing me what is better, he's giving me a way to go there. And that's why I like it. That's the next level, right? Moses, minding his own business, just doing his job with his sheep as a servant. He was stripped of all these outward enculturated signs of meaning, and just in the depths of human experience as far as he had been raised, and he had to conquer that in what he believed. And here he sees this bush. What is his natural reaction? The first thought he has was to look at it. So he wasn't looking. He saw it or he felt it and he looked. Okay? And he's not just like, he stared at this thing. And then he says this. This is Exodus 3, verse 3. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. So, Moses' reaction, so the reaction of most people, this should be a meme. Somebody wants to make this and send it to me, I'll get a laugh. So the reaction of most people is, I'm thinking of the Vince McMahon meme with the eyes getting brighter. The reaction of most people is to just collapse and die. That's, if you want to know why God can't reveal himself more to most people, it's because they would die. They're not worthy of the Holy Ghost, and that's required to protect them. Even if they were, they wouldn't be able to see anything because the glory in them is so minuscule. You can't perceive very much beyond what you've become. But he doesn't flop down and die. And then it's a triangle. You go up the pyramid. Some few, we'll talk about Jacob here in a second. Well, let's just talk about, so when this same ball of fire appears to Jacob, I've written about this. I've seen this. Jacob collapses and he crawls slowly. Takes him a whole night to get to the Lord. Just on his face, doing the best he can. His legs blown out of socket from the explosion of the appearance. And when he finally gets there, he grabs onto the feet of the Lord and just this like final terminal lurch to God, to the feet of Jesus. And he grabs his feet and he just holds them. Because that's all he could do. Fighting against the lack in him. That's all he could do. And he just, so we're talking about Jacob crawling towards God. And so Jacob lurches and he grabs the feet of Jesus and he just holds them. And Jesus is so patient. And he just stood there and he let him do that for a long time. And then he said, I have to go. And then Jacob still didn't give up. But anyway, so this is a very unusual reaction, right? And you ask yourself, well, why are there some people who experience more of God than others? This is why, because they do more to experience God than other people do. And while it's true that some of the differences carry over from before birth, the vast majority of them can be experienced by anyone. It's just that, everything is cause and effect. You just have to discover the causes to get the same effects. Very few of those causes are in our decisions before we were born. They're very significant, and the things they unlock are extremely important. But that is not the difference between you and Jacob in this story. And it's not the difference between you and Moses in this story. Sort of. I mean, that there's limits of that, because Moses was able to stand there and look at the bush because of who he was before he was born. But Jacob could crawl towards the Lord. If you did a pie chart of this experience, there's a lot you can work on before you hit the things you can't work on. It's like looking at a bodybuilder and saying like, oh, well, he's got great genetics. It's like, okay, sure, right? Sure. But before you ascribe the differences between you and him to something you can do nothing about, have you first considered the things you can do something about? And what of those things have you done something about? And so if you're a couch potato and every day you eat more than you should, and the last weight you lifted was a bag of Cheetos, then there's probably a whole lot you can do about that before you start just writing it off to genetics, right? All right, so, and this is what I wanted to focus on. This is the first chunk, is how do you react when you see a burning bush? If you look down at the ground, like I did the first time I saw the Lord, I should say the first time the Lord appeared to me. I did see him at that time, but at the end of the experience, the only thing I could see was his hands. I still wouldn't look up. He was at a table. He was breaking bread. And just deeply meaningful, but I won't go into that right now, what it was all about. So if you can't look up, then that's a worthiness issue. And the problem is that you've deviated from your understanding of what is right. I should say in present tense, you deviate. Any past sins you can be forgiven of. And Jesus has paid the price. It's one of his favorite things to do, is forgive people of sins. But he cannot change you so that you don't do that thing again. Because what caused you to do the thing wasn't his fault either. It was your choice. And as long as your character is such that you desire things you should not desire, and you do things you should not do, or you do not do things you need to do, that's on you. And you need to fix that. So, again, read Repentance. You really should. So, or listen to it. Cindy did an audiobook. You can listen to it for free on this channel. So if you can't look up, that's one thing, right? But suppose you see the fire, what do you do? Because I'll tell you what most people do, and I don't have to guess, right? Most people one thing they do is they ignore. So we have this phrase in modern parlance of ghosting people. I'm not sure you have any clue how much of modern culture is specific, strategic, moves by Satan to inject into common usage things, behaviors and ideas that terminally block you from God. And it's not in some magical way like if you watch rated R movies, you blah, blah. No, it's not anything like that, folks. It shuts down your ability to consider greater things. When you're comfortable with ghosting people, he's going to use that to cause you to be comfortable with ghosting blasts of light and the people that carry them. So almost everything I'm about to tell you could be an answer to the question, why haven't angels visited me? If they have not visited you. They have visited me. But if they have not visited you, God works by the same laws he always has. They're written into the scriptures. If you want to know who angels visit and why, there are principles that if you follow those principles and you live the kind of life, angels will visit you too. And they probably already have. Because remember that angels aren't always just beings of glory that come in supernatural experiences. The same spirits of angels are the spirits of men. And Moses is one of the governing angels in heaven. He's one who can say, I stand in the presence of God, like Gabriel said. But when he was in the flesh, his flesh veiled that and gave a way for him to interact with people that could not comfortably approach him otherwise. So there's a lot there. There's tremendous value in the ministry of men. God uses that tool extensively, and it's a wonderful, wonderful way to bridge limitations in humanity. Anyway, so ghosting is a big deal. So people ghosted Jesus. Let's read about that. And let me just say why this is bad. When you ghost someone, you're avoiding the duty of providing reasons for how you're about to treat them. You're completely sidestepping anything they've shown you or anything they are, and you're not saying why. Now, suppose that person, there's no such thing as good people and bad people, okay? But this is an oversimplification we can step into to make it easier to explain things. Let's suppose that's a bad person. You say, well, I just don't want to deal with them. Do you realize what things of eternal worth you are casting aside by shrugging your duty to testify of what you know to that person? I don't mean in an explicit gospel sense necessarily. If you have a toxic so-called person in your life, you might be the person best equipped in the whole world to help them, to just give them a chunk of truth that they have disqualified themselves from having with them without you. Your very presence quickens the light inside of them and boosts the strength of the signal of their conscience so that God can reach them. It's called conviction, but that's not the best word. It's a scriptural word, but it boosts the volume of the signal so that they can hear it again. And they're not hearing it because of themselves or the light that's within them, because they've dimmed it by turning away from what they know. You're boosting the volume, and they have the choice of hearing it because of what you're adding to it. And if you walk away from that, there will come a day where you are filled with guilt and remorse, because you will be accountable for the good that you could have done if you did what disciples of Christ covenant to do, to stand as witnesses or demonstrations of him at all times and in all places till they die. So don't ghost people. What about good people? If you ghost a good person, you've done the sin, you've committed the sin that Jesus describes in John chapter 3. The light was apparent, it was shined right in front of you, and you chose darkness. Right then, you chose darkness. Because when you ghost someone, a good person, you step away from the need to, it's not the best word, to justify yourself to that. It's to reconcile yourself to the signal that was just presented to you. Because if you are not guilty of that deficit in light between you two, then you will not feel compelled to leave their presence, to dissociate with them. You will feel perfectly comfortable in their presence. Adam and Eve felt perfectly comfortable in the presence of God before the fall, even though they were naked. And this is what we're talking about here. You can't say this doesn't apply to me. Oh, get lost. You have to reconcile. And you can know you're reconciled because it won't hurt you to be associated with them. Okay, we're talking about don't ghost people. So here's how people ghosted Jesus. There are lots of examples, but here's just one. In John 6, chapter 6, that's funny, huh? So John 6:6 says, "From that time, many of his disciples went back and walked no more with him." They ghosted him. So what had he done to offend them so badly? In this case, if I'm not mistaken, let me check here. He had said, "You have to eat my flesh and drink my blood." Yep. Let's see. Yes. Okay. Now, you might hear that and say, well, yeah, that's offensive. I mean, that's cannibalism. Here's the thing. There wasn't a person there that thought he was saying that they should be cannibals and that was the way to eternal life. What he was saying was, you have to live like I live, or you can't be with me where I'm going. He said, I came down from heaven so that you could see what I'm like and what the Father's like, because you wouldn't know otherwise. And I'm coming down here to show you this so that you live that way. And it was too much for them. These people, they just wanted fish and bread, right? And almost every Christian today just wants free loaves and fishes. But God wants to give you what produces the fish and the bread. He wants to give you the bread from heaven. So they ghosted him. And that's what a lot of people do. They turn away for various reasons. In this case, what he was teaching them was too hard. So they want to be a little more righteous, but not a lot of it more righteous, right? They don't want, no one who today says, I want to be like Jesus. A little child will say that. But find me an adult who says that honestly. They exist. But I'm saying, as a percentage of people that claim to be Christians, they're very few. What they will say is, well, no one's perfect. They'll say things like that. Jesus was perfect. Well, he was Jesus. He's so much better than we are. Truly he is. Truly he is. But why did he come? He came to provide a way. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He said, those that believe in me will do the things that they see me do. So do you believe that? Because if you say, well, no one's perfect, you don't believe that. You don't believe in the one who was perfect. He didn't just come so that you could stop feeling guilty about the bad things you've done in the past. He came so that you could do good things in the present and be with him in the future. He said, shine your light so that when people see you, they get a better idea of what the Father is like. Now you tell me, what did he expect of us? And you look in the mirror and you see an imperfect person. But that's not what Jesus sees. He sees someone that's capable of great things. He sees the love that you have the capacity to show others. So, he said, when people do what I'm telling them to do, they're going to offend others. And it's necessary that this offense comes. But woe be to those who are offended. Or in plainer terms, those who are offended do great harm to themselves. Because what they're being given as a tool that they can climb on to get higher, they're turning into chains that hold them down in how they react to it. So people turn away because they're offended. Specifically, their feelings are hurt because their comeliness is turned into corruption, as Daniel's was. See, Daniel responded in a very different way to that. He said, Gabriel must be a great angel if he's making me feel so inadequate. And hallelujah for being exposed to such light, so I can orient my life to it and become more like it, more like the source of this light, which is God. And Daniel didn't turn away. He endured the experience and he learned what he needed to learn, which incidentally was what he had asked to know. What would you do? You have a desire in your heart right now. What would you do if God sent you an angel and that angel told you exactly what you wanted to know, or showed you the path to get exactly what you say you want? Well, how would you react? What if he used a mortal angel? Paul talked about how you should be careful in how you entertain strangers, because some of them are angels in disguise. And people read that and say, oh, what he meant was, sometimes angels pretend to be mortals. That's very true. And I've been ministered to by one such person, and they like to give you situations to see where your heart is. They already know. What they're doing is giving you opportunities to improve in your present choice in a way that exceeds your previous choices. It's a very merciful, wonderful thing. And the joy on these people's faces when you pass the test, it's unbelievable. But the greater meaning of what Paul was saying was that people like Paul are angels. The same spirits in them were glorified beings before they were born. And they're here as part of their ministry. They're not here for what they'll get out of this life, although it's impossible to serve God without gaining richer rewards than you can imagine. But no one at high levels of glory works for that. It's quite the opposite. You can't give a servant of God something good without their first thought being, who can I help with this? How can I use this to help somebody? And that's why the morning stars jumped for joy when Jesus announced that we would come down here again to this earth to minister, to provide an opportunity that had Jesus not been willing to do what he did, does, and will do, none of us could do what we, depending on when you're born, have done, are doing, and will do. And that was the only way. He was the keystone, the key ingredient, the essential prerequisite for all of mankind to experience greater glory, a greater share of the glory of God. Whether just in perception or through becoming more than they were before. I am late for work, and we're not even done with Moses yet. This is why I don't make videos. It's too easy to lighten the filters that are in place when you can control what you publish a lot easier. And when the Spirit comes on you and tells you to say things, you can say them and obey, and then also obey, and taking them out of whatever you're writing and placing them where they need to be, both in space and time. But it's necessary for me to say these things, and I'll do what I'm told. Okay, so Moses reacts to the fire. I'm just chuckling because every time I get to a point or picking up a point, the video ends. I don't see the little timer because I slide the thing down so I don't have to see myself talking. I'm just looking at scriptures and notes. So anyway, Moses turns into the fire, and he fastens his look on the fire, and he says, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt. So I made the case that most people would not react this way in capacity, but also in choice. And so Moses is so extraordinary, and he says, not only can he stand there and stare at the fire, but his first thought is, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. And it is of vital importance that you gain a greater understanding of the diversity of people that inhabit this earth. It is very important. Because, as Jesus said, if you judge yourself by the goodness of others, you will, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm confident that if he were here today, he would have no problem with me saying this as if it's a quote. He said, if you judge yourself by the goodness of others, you'll always come short of my goodness, because they're not as good as me. You have to judge yourself by the goodness of God. And what you see as the goodness of God is not the actual goodness of God. It's the degree to which you've come to understand the goodness of God so far in your conscience, your idea of God, your idea of the ideal, which if you live your life properly will extend and amplify every day of your life. And you might not notice that happens, it co-occurs with you becoming a better person, because you can only perceive just beyond how you are. You can see everything beneath and only a little above. But Moses was a tremendous person, and truth always leaves clues, right? And I've given you arguments from the scriptures about the diversity of people here in this series of videos. But you would probably not turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. So, even though Moses could stand in the presence of this bush and not collapse like Daniel would have, or die like someone less than Daniel would have immediately, he still knew there was something very strange about this bush, that this was not a normal thing. And his reaction to it wasn't to ignore it, ghosting it. It wasn't to be offended, like, wow, this is something I've never seen in my life before. I better ignore it, because I feel bad that, I used to think I was hot stuff in Egypt, and here's real hot stuff, and I just would rather not wrap my head around that. The urge of his innate being was, I need to find out why this bush is not burned, which also reveals that he was not just seeing something, he was processing it. He was actually actively thinking about it. I heard a statistic that says something like 50% of people don't have an internal monologue, and I don't know if that's true, but they sure act that way. So there's so much around us, and we just go through it like brainless robots, automatons. There's so much to process. And you could say we're saturated because it's a technological age with information everywhere. All right. But if I teleported you back in time to Jesus's time, do you know those people were doing the same thing? They were doing the same thing. Jesus came and he said, I've done things that no one else has ever done. I've taught things that no one else has ever taught. And you cast it aside as a thing of naught. And if you do acknowledge it, you say, I do these things by the power of the devil without any reason to believe that that could even be possible. And that was his daily experience with these impenetrably hard, difficult, hypocritical, dishonest cowards. And that wasn't something special about those people at that time. It is a human nature property. So let's have courage to look at the fires. Let's have honesty to say, boy, this is different. And let's have desire towards God so that we turn and walk towards the fire. But Moses was not just saying, this is something I want to go figure this. Why the bush is not burned. He said, this fire should be causing things to burn. And it's not. And I want to find out why. And then we'll tie this up here for Moses. It says, when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, here am I. And then the experience continues. But let's pause here. There are so many things that God wants to do to you, for you, and through you that you are not allowing him to do because he's waiting for you to turn aside to see. He already lit fires in your life and you just walk by them. A lot of times you get angry because he dared to do such a thing. Or just because it is. Maybe you're not acknowledging his hand in it. It's unlikely you are. It goes step by step by step, folks. Okay? So let's keep reading. He said, draw not nigh hither. So do you hear the call and the answer in all this, right? God sends a fire. Well, first, God destroys Moses' life and sends him to Midian because that's what needed to happen. And he told him, you're going to be this deliverer. But he didn't tell him how. And it just so happens that he had to go to this place and experience this loss of all earthly things for who knows how long before he was just doing his thing. He thought what must that have been? What was I delusional? No, he was right on the track the whole time. The path to God is not the yellow brick road to Oz. It's not really clear to everyone without even thinking about it, and you couldn't deny that you're on it or not. I mean, it is when you know, but you have to learn to recognize some really hairy things as the exact process of God taking you to the promised land, right? So he's in the backwaters of Midian with a bunch of sheep, and he sees this bush, and that was the next step. God provides a bush. Moses turns aside. God calls him out of the bush. Moses says, here am I. All of these things had to happen because they're steps. And God just sits there with breadcrumbs. He's just sitting there trying to get us to come along with him, right? Because he can't come out and say A, B, C, D, because we'd die or we'd get angry at him. Do you know that the greater the righteousness, the less likely a person is to see it as such? Do you know that the greater the glory that God shows you, the less likely you are to see it as glory? that might be like dumbfounding to you and just totally blow your mind, but it's true. It's true. We're the ones who are limiting him, and we're limiting him because there's so much to who and how he is that he has to lead us along like brainless little sheep in the beginning and just like feed us so slowly so we can come up and understand things little by little, line upon line. And every step in that path is super important. The current step you're on is the most important step there is because it's the last one that you've come up to, right? And everything ahead hangs on how you handle yourself in this current nexus, this current coalface, right? The current thing, current step you're on. And it might be a 4-minute step. It might be a 40-year step. It might be a lifetime step, right? The process is very long. So Moses says, "Here am I." God says, "Don't come here until you take your shoes off, because this is holy ground. And by the way, I'm the God of thy father, the God of Abraham." I'm not trying to minimize this. We've gone deep. I need to skim a little. Okay? It wasn't until God said, "I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob," that Moses hid his face, and he was afraid to look upon God. And I know what that is like. So then he connects what Moses had experienced previously with his life, in his life, with what is right now, and now we're done with Moses for today. So I want to just keep drilling on reactions to truth. There's one more idea I need to tell you about. Okay. So I wanted to go into this step by step before we move on. I wanted to go through John chapter 9, which is the story of the man born blind. This is a really important chapter. Maybe I can give this to you and ask you to read it. I really encourage you to do so. And if you're the kind of person that all you'll do is watch videos, then whatever, there's not much I can. Okay, so I was encouraging you to read John chapter 9, and what I want you to look for, write it out. I want you to go step by step through the chapter and show the call and the response. So what Jesus did, what this man did. What Jesus did, what this man did. And sprinkled into there, you will see the reaction of the man's parents and the reactions of the Pharisees. And they're all reactions to the same stimulus. And I want you to think about that as you read that. Okay, so the point you'll get out of that is that God always leaves clues. Truth leaves clues. No matter where it's found or what it consists in, it leaves clues. And it wants to reveal itself. Jesus said he is the spirit of truth. He's the source of truth as far as we're concerned. And God wants to reveal himself. And it's our limitations that prevent that from him revealing himself to us. We have to become students of recognizing those limitations and getting rid of them in ourselves. And we can, as far as we do, we can go help other people do the same. But I can't spend the time right now to go through John 9. I highly encourage you to. The final idea I wanted to go over was this idea of stopping people's mouths. I know no one understands what this means, and so I figured I'd talk about it, and maybe this is the best way, I don't know. But it's important that you learn this so that you don't do it. I should say so that you stop doing it. And I've known about this for quite some time. I've experienced this for a very long time, long before I understood it or knew what was going on. And I knew there would be a day where I talked about this, and I will talk about it again. Let's start in Psalm 107:42. It says, "The righteous shall see it and rejoice, and all iniquity shall stop her mouth." So without going into the context here, I just want to present this as an example of a dichotomy of response to the same stimulus of truth. And one of these responses is perception and rejoicing, or seeing and valuing what is given. And then the other is to stop your mouth. And that's what the iniquitous people do. Now, in reality, it's not a light switch, it's a dimmer switch, right? There's a line between all that. These are the amongst the extremities. There is a thing that's worse that you can do than stop your mouth, and that's killing the person who's presenting whatever is being presented. But we're going to talk about stopping the mouth today. And now we'll go to Matthew 19:25. Because I might forget to say it in a minute, I will interject here that in a previous one of these videos, I said, in this series, I said, you should think, if you're not receiving the ministry of angels, you should think about why that is, what you're doing to block that, to prevent that. One of the things that you can do to prevent this is reacting to the demonstration of greater light by saying nothing. Now, there's a difference. In this series, I've sort of had to stop talking because I was contending with emotion. And, the same thing can happen. A person can do the same exact thing outwardly as other people, and it can be from a totally different cause and mean a completely different thing. And we get in trouble when we judge others when we assume that everyone does the same things we do for different reasons, or that when they do something, they could only be doing it for the reasons we would be doing it if we were doing that same thing. We get into a lot of trouble by doing that. And you really should assume the best motives in people when it comes to condemning them. That's not the only sort of flavor of judgment. But if you're about to condemn someone else, there's a different and better process, which I don't have time to go into right now. I don't want to get too far afield, but don't do that. And so when I get choked up, it's because the intensity of the love of God that I feel, it cannot be expressed in words here. Because God's love is that great. And one of the greatest treasures we have in this life is to come up through guided experience with God to feel some share of that for others. And it's weird because we can't, there's so many things that are coupled in reality that you can't separate them. And one of these is that you cannot experience the love of God without loving other people. If you have one, you will have the other. And it doesn't matter which way it comes from. It's like wisdom and reason. It doesn't matter what you have wisdom about. It doesn't matter what you're reasoning about. All truth comes from God. And it's like this spider web. That's not the best analogy. It's like a mountaintop that has a million trails to get to the summit. And wherever you start, he's going to bring you in through that path. He's going to bring you. It doesn't matter if it looks sideways for a little while. It goes up, right? And he knows it. And he's taking you in the exact way you need to come. And then they converge as you get towards the top. They become more similar to each other. But anyway, love is like this. It's so coupled to so many things. And if you truly love God, so if you want, you could go reread the letters that John wrote. John had a tighter grasp on the love of God than any of the other apostles. And none of them will be offended by me saying that, because when you love truth, it's not about who gets credit. The point is that everybody sees Jesus for what he really is, or to a greater extent than you do. So John wrote those letters, and one of the central themes is the love of God. And one of the things he says is, one of the ideas he presents is that you can't love God without loving your brother, your brothers, your fellow men. And you can't love your fellow men without loving God. And one idea that is going to sweep the earth is that righteousness is not about how many times you say the word God. And it's not about what you profess to believe. It's about how you feel about how God really is and how you demonstrate that in how you feel about and act towards everyone else. And there will be harlots and tax collectors in the kingdom of heaven who had more of the love of God in them than popes and priests and Pharisees and whoever else. Many, many. When dinner is served, when the wedding occurs, the hall will be filled with strangers from the highways, not with the people who were invited and who had better things to do. So, Matthew 19:25, getting back to stopping mouths, that's where we were going. Jesus teaches that a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven. That's verse 23. And he says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. I'm not even going to touch what he meant by that. That's not the point here. The point is that this was a highly offensive teaching to the people listening to him. He says, when his disciples heard it, they were exceedingly amazed, saying, who then can be saved? In other words, we can't fathom how someone could get through life without desiring or having riches, or without preferring to keep them over use them, opportunities to use them for the benefit of other people. And they're thinking like, boy, we know a lot of people who have died who had some money when they died. So how does that work, right? And Jesus says, with men, this is impossible. With God, all things are possible. But I want to zoom in onto they were exceedingly amazed. So some translations say astonished. If you look up the Greek, and of course there are a billion references of when this word is used across Scripture. When we say astonished, I think most of the time it has a positive connotation. And it's like, oh, I didn't believe that, but wow, that's really cool. So someone says like, you're going to get a Corvette in the mail. And you say like, yeah, bro, doubt it. And then all of a sudden the car drives up and the truck drives up with a Corvette on it. And the guy says, hey, here's the keys. And you're astonished. Happened again. I was mid explanation, midpoint there. So talking about the meaning of astonish in the scriptures or words, the concept of being astonished or to marvel. There's a lot of uses of this idea. So it's not a pleasant surprise. That's what I wanted to get across. Like if someone says, oh, I bought you a Corvette, and you're like, what? No way. And then they drive it up. It's like, oh, I'm astonished. That's not what the scriptures mean when they say marvel, astonished, whatever. You look up the word, there's this sense of loss. So it's when some previously unbelieved or not considered truth is presented to you in such a way that it robs you of meaning and joy that you previously had, right? There's a sense of being stricken with panic, right? So who here thinks that if God appeared to them, they'd be stricken with panic? We don't make kitschy art that has pictures of like people having panic attacks as a result of Jesus appearing to them. We draw like these cheesy pictures of Jesus holding up druggies and stuff. And look, if people get worth out of that, that's fine. But, and I don't object to to that, of people getting value out of some share of good with the concept of God, but he is holy. He is the epitome of good, and we glorify him by recognizing that and drawing towards it, not by bringing him down to us. Now, his arm is extended, and he reaches out to us in so many ways, uncountable ways, and at every level. And he does help the people who are really struggling in life. Aren't we all? But goodness, folks, there's a lot more to it. And anyway, if we wanted to be more realistic about how an interaction with God would go, we would not be drawing pictures like that. We'd be, or like there's one set of footprints in the sand and all this stuff. That accentuates what God does for us, which is real and massive. But like I said in a previous video, if you want to glorify God, do what he says. Show him your gratitude by doing what he says. Don't celebrate this idea of what he does for you without you doing anything. That's not the point, because it has nothing to do with how you change. He is all about how you change. His goodness is because it's tied to our becoming good, right? Not tied to, like, we can't bring him down, but you can't really quantify, you can't appreciate his goodness without also recognizing his power to make anyone good. Anyway, stricken with panic. That's how we got onto that side note. So no one draws art like that. Unfortunately, I would like it. Or unable to act because the magnitude of shock is so great. Okay. Now, I won't go down that. I was about to say something to really ruffle some feathers. Okay. So sometimes our experiences with God are like having a trusted business partner where you're really investing everything you have, your whole working life. And then right about the time you think you're going to retire, he comes in the office with a giant gas can and just totally calm, totally normal demeanor. He just starts splashing everything. And you're like, what are you doing? And he's like, come on. And you go outside and you're like, what, just shouting like, what is going on? And he strikes a match and he throws it into the building, and your money's in there, the building, like your warehouse, whatever. It's all in there. Your whole life, everything you've worked for, as far as you know, it's in that building. And he just puts his arm around you and you're just shocked, right? That's what this is. You're just shocked. You can't believe it. Everything of meaning is gone. Everything you worked for is gone. And he says, well, that wasn't the point of all this. This is just for what comes next. Come on. And he's just as happy as can be. So I don't care who you are and how much you trust your business partner, who your business partner is. You're probably not going to react really well to that, right? And that's the greatest way I can try to explain this without overtly religious themes. How it is to be astonished at a greater revelation of God. And this, again, we're coming back to why Moses is such an impressive person, right? Because that's not how he reacted. He turned into the fire. He turned towards it. He started walking that way. That's crazy. If you knew Moses, you would say that guy is bananas. You'd say it because he's so different than you are. And if you didn't say it in a bad way, you'd be equally, it'd be an equal magnitude in a good direction. Like, he's so far beyond what anyone would do that I know. So, shutting the mouths. So, the righteous interpret greater revelation of God as an outpouring of his love, as a path to climb higher, as a gift. No matter how bad it makes them feel, they feel good about it. That's a weird concept, but it's true. The wicked, they interpret it as a loss and as that's the best way to say it, because both groups can experience pain. But the wicked, there's no meaning in the pain. It's not pain that brings greater meaning, like having a baby for a woman. It's just pain. It's just loss. It's pain that comes with the loss of something that they valued, and it's a decrease in meaning, not an increase in meaning. There's this scripture in Isaiah, and I'll talk about it, and we'll leave this as the last thing I talk about in this series. So Isaiah 52:15, so shall he sprinkle many nations. The kings shall shut their mouths at him, for that which had not been told them shall they see, and that which they had not heard shall they consider. Massively paring down what I'd like to say about a lot of things with this. Have you ever asked why the scriptures are so hard to understand? So an honest prayer would go something like this: Lord, so many people of such great faith have sacrificed so much, many their lives, to bring us these words, to preserve them, to capture them in the first place. Why is it that they're so hard to understand? Among the answers to this question is the idea that they are encoded. Meaning happens on levels, and when meaning is plain, it comes with consequences. And that's probably as far as I can say for now on that, without making this video series 200 hours long, at least. But suffice it to say that when you read what was written by the translator in whatever translation you read, or even if you read it in, the Old Testament in Hebrew or the New Testament in Greek, you are writing the limited reduction of an infinite idea to a finite recording. And I mentioned many limits that we place on God in what he can tell us, and how a lot of those limits are how he can tell us. And one of those limits we place is how close the meaning he can teach us about, the idea he can teach us about, how close it has to be to the literal words on the page. And when you just sever that link and you say, like the lepers, we started with the lepers, I'm not actually here to be healed of leprosy. I'm here to encounter God. And he says, your faith has healed you. Go on thy way. You say, where are we to go? Only you have the words of eternal life. Doesn't matter how hard this is. You're the way. My way is your way, Lord. And you cling to his feet. So, it's a good practice to ask lots of questions when you're reading the scriptures. And one of those questions can be, Lord, if I trusted you completely, and you were sitting here with me, how would you tell me what's in this verse? And when you ask that question, go back to the other video to hear the question. He will answer it. And Revelation tends to be continuous and sequential. And it's line upon line, but it's also focus upon focus. Like when you're looking into a camera and you're focusing it. It gets better and better over time. And this is another limitation that we place upon God when we say, I will only hear messages if they're in a completed and perfect form. And if that's your attitude, I guess you're just going to throw the scriptures away, because there's all kinds of stuff in there that is not expressed in perfect finality. And you're never going to listen to any messenger God ever sends you. Because even when he comes himself, he has to express things line upon line because of where you are. And so if you're requiring the final truth, we're talking about mouths shutting, that's going to shut his mouth. But the point of mouth shutting, this theme, I'm talking about people shutting their mouths in response to the revelation of greater things from God. So I guess let's get back onto that topic, but I want to give you these jewels and these tools, because you might not realize the worth of them, but I am just flinging them at you all the time. And they're tools as well. They're valuable jewels and they're valuable tools. My wife is very supportive of many of my eccentricities. And one of those is that years ago, every time I went to Lowe's or Home Depot, I'd buy a shovel or I'd buy a rake and a bucket. And it didn't matter why I was in Home Depot or Lowe's. I would just I need another shovel. I need another rake. And when the aftermath of COVID started unfolding, I came home one day and I said, do you have any idea how expensive shovels are now? And she guessed 5 times before she got it, because that's how high it was compared to what it used to be. And I said, it's a good thing we have so many shovels, huh? And she said, yeah, you were right about that one, because I'm not always right about everything. And tools, that a shovel would be worth a lot if you were suddenly in a situation where you had to grow all your food by hand, wouldn't it? And there was no gas, there were no stores, and you don't know where to find iron ore or how to smelt it or how to make a shaft or whatever. So the value of things is not always apparent, but the unfolding, increasing shares of the fullness of what could be reveals the worth of things incrementally. Okay, so Isaiah 52:15. So shall he sprinkle many nations, the kings shall shut their mouths at him, for that which had not been told them shall they see, and that which they had not heard shall they consider. And so in my own study, I have asked a lot of questions about scriptural meanings and why was this word used and what's the Hebrew and why, what are the other senses of the Greek and all these other things, and could this be rendered more plainly? And in this interactive process, I've generated text and refined text, and I go back to it every time God teaches me something new. I keep it reconciled to my present sincere understanding. And in my reflection, I would currently today re-render this text as follows. This is not a translation. This is just my reflection. Through the ideas he disseminates from heaven, as a priest flinging blood, oil, and water onto the object he sanctifies, he will end the smugness of the false security previously enjoyed by many nations. Even the greatest among them will shut their mouths, because they will see what they had never been shown, and they will understand what they had never before considered. Now, I don't want to expound on the first sentence in that right now, but this is about the end-time servant, and the references to the sprinkling, that's a very rich word in Hebrew. I said I'm not going to expound on it, and here I go. I won't say all things about this that I'd like to right now, but the sprinkling, it doesn't mean sprinkle. It's what the priests did with this hyssop, which is a plant, and they dipped it in blood, oil, and water according to prescriptions of ordinances. And it's the verb used for what the high priest did on the Ark of the Covenant and on sacrifices and to sanctify objects that were used in the temple. It's the word used when you take the blood of the lamb on just prior to the Exodus and you put it on the lintel of the door. So blood, oil, and water are all different symbols of different aspects of what God provides. And, we'll leave that at that. But that ending the smugness of false security previously enjoyed by many nations is really important. That sense is in the Hebrew. It's a little extrapolation. It mixes in ideas from other places in the scriptures, particularly Isaiah. It's a theme. But it's not just that he sprinkles nations, right? This person, this end times character, the servant of God, this priest, he, in doing so, in revealing what he reveals, remember how Gabriel came and just standing there, he didn't even say anything, just standing there before he said anything, Daniel's comeliness turned to corruption. The comeliness of the world is complete corruption. Daniel's was his best attempt at finding and following righteousness from God. The world is Babylon. It's fallen. Everything's an illusion. It's false. It doesn't endure. It's made up. The glory of the world is a social construct. Everything else that they say, maybe not so much. But it will all come crashing down. And anyway, ironically, these things are coupled because when truth is revealed, consequences come with it. And all of a sudden, what was sufficient to withstand the very much held back share of reality becomes insufficient and it collapses. And there are reasons for why the collapse is so sudden. But anyway, that's not what I want to talk about. I want to end this on this thought. That what the reason I bring this up is about the shutting of the mouths. Because I want to tell you, don't do that, right? And I've kind of told you how this might not look how you would think it would look if you just read the words and thought, well, what does this look like? But you probably do this, okay? That's a finger wag. You probably do this, and you really shouldn't. You really shouldn't. So, right, what does this mean? The shut their mouths, what does it mean? It would go back to the word astonished. They're so shocked at what they've been told because it's so different from whatever they've been told, but also because it suddenly takes everything they thought they knew and just makes it look like a paper bag lunch. Like, who even cares, right? Who even cares? You need to understand, end time servant, whatever. Let's talk about Jesus. That's the point of all of it. When he came to that woman at the well, all he did was say, you're not married right now, but you're with a guy and you've been with a bunch of other guys. Do you know what she said to her people back in town? She said, I found the Messiah because he told me everything I've ever done. This is really sad. I don't know the lady, but I feel bad for her because she identified everything she'd ever done with the 7 guys she had slept with. That's pretty sad, but that she didn't have more meaning in her life. But that's how she interpreted it. It was so huge. Everyone reacts to the blasting of light differently. But she reacted to this tiny chunk by saying, I found the Messiah, and you should come hear him. So we talked before about the role other people can have in promulgating God's word and his glory and his goodness and his character. This is an example. He got an in with all the other people there in Samaria through this lady. And she was willing to say, hey, she didn't exaggerate she exaggerated, let's be honest. But she said, look, this was a real conversation I had with the guy. This is what happened. if you do what I asked you to and you read John 9, it's a much better example. That guy never exaggerated what Jesus did. He went step by step, acknowledging exactly what he had seen to the level he had seen it. And that was enough for them to throw him out of their church. But it doesn't take much with the wicked, right? But that was the path to coming up to knowing. Sorry, it cut me off, right? That was the blind man, the path he traveled was just acknowledging the things that had been adequately demonstrated to him in an appropriate way. There was nothing extreme about it. It was very subtle, line upon line. And even when he did extreme things, like it's an extreme thing to let a random stranger, if you're a blind person and you're in a city and you're dependent upon the charity of others that you can only encounter in a city, because of the bustle and the number of people and the low percentage that will help you, to let a random stranger lead you way outside of the city to this pool is a huge leap of faith. But given what he had, the evidence he had, that was perfectly appropriate. And his situation, he was blind. What do you have to lose, you know? Like, what, is the guy going to leave you there? You probably have a couple days to make it back to the city, however hard that is, and it won't take you that long. He had nothing to lose. And so often with God, the most extreme things he offers us, in our eyes, they're extreme. The honest response is like, what do you have to lose? What evidence has he ever given you that it's not going to be worth it? When have you ever done anything God told you to do and it wasn't worth it? It's never happened. It's never going to happen. And the ironic thing is the long stuff, the big, like the Hail Mary passes, the huge things we think of as big sacrifices, they never come to people that don't have a whole library of evidence that just makes it the very next thing. He is so patient. He's so patient, and he will never fail you. I wish. There's a scene, and I'm sorry, this is going to seem irreverent. I don't care. What are you going to clasp onto and grasp for when you're trying to explain things that don't have words in the human language that exceed the experiences of everyone you know? There's a scene in this cartoon that came out when I was a kid, the Transformers movie, which is a classic for anyone of my generation. But there's this scene where Optimus Prime, he opens up his chest, and they had this thing called the Matrix of Leadership. And I don't even know what the heck was supposed to be in there. I made my kids watch this, and they didn't find as much value in it as I did. And he hands it to this other guy because he's dying, and the other guy's taking over. But maybe it had all the wisdom of their people or his experiences. Somehow it made the person who received it more than they were before. I'm not crying about Transformers, people. I'm crying about Jesus. And when he came and he died for us, he gave us more than we had. He's transmitting something on a level that's so crude, but so holy, because it's the only way we can receive it. And when you see him doing this, when you hear the story of him doing this, it makes you more than you were before, because you say, it's possible to love other people more than I love myself. And he did it. And so I could do it too. So maybe that seems too hard, but at least I can try. At least I can try. And then you try, and then you become better at it. And then he asks you to do more. He shows you that it goes deeper than you thought. You say, well, okay, I can try that too. And you just keep going. And eventually you get to the point where you say, look, I get what's going on here. And I don't know who you are yet, but I get it. I get where this is going. And I understand that the whole point of this isn't the things. It's to get to the point where I get out of your way and I trust you enough that whatever you send, I will see and I will value and I will do, even if I don't yet really comprehend it. And when you do that, when you cease to impede God, and the only impediment is the time you require because of your humanity, he will do mighty things in your life. He will. He will flood you with his power and his love and miracles and all these things that can't be described before you experience it for yourself. So if I could open my chest and give you this, I would do it right now. But if that could be done, he would have already done it. There are things we can do where we stand that he could not do when he stood here. But again, that's because of our limitations. And you could boil it up by saying, well, I won't go there. Please do not react to greater revelations of God by shutting your mouth. Appropriate reactions include thanking God, living what you've been told, and asking questions, particularly asking for more. That's what he wants. When we're satisfied, there's no room for him to give us more. I left off one other appropriate response, which is very important. Share what you've been given with others. It doesn't have to be shared in the same words or in the same form. If you're given a book, you don't have to give someone else a book. Ideas are transmutable. You can just share with them a slice of who you've become because of what you've learned. And I don't mean like, look what I do with this now because I'm different. Although there's a place for that and it's valuable. I mean, once it's up here and in your heart, you can generate things that you might not even be able to trace back to the thing that you were given. But be who you are and live according to what you believe. And that's how you will echo these things through the world. And that's how God can reach everyone, no matter how many limits they have. One of us can get through the cracks. And if we all try to get through all the cracks we're exposed to, we'll get the message across as far as it'll be received by each person, as far as they're willing to accept it. And that's what needs to happen before everything comes crashing down. It'll still be spread once it does, but it will require much greater faith to give and to receive. That's all I'll say about that. So please do not respond to greater revelation of light by being offended or by ghosting, rejecting, ignoring, by just shutting your mouth. Carry it to other people. Live what you've learned. Ask for more. I hope you've found this useful. I have to get to work.